Over the last 3 days, our nation's been shaken by a series of violent and tragic events. I think first we witnessed in graphic video the death of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile. And then last night we witnessed the coordinated and cowardly ambush and the assassination of 5 brave Dallas police officers. We're far from having all the answers about each of these incidents, and we should all act with restraint until we know all the facts and they're all made aware to us. But I think we know enough to be able to speak some difficult truths. Truths that may help us find a way forward from these troubling times. First, those of us who are not African American will never fully understand the experience of being black in America. But we should all understand why our fellow Americans in the black community are angry at the images of an African American man with no criminal record who was pulled over for a busted taillight, slumped in his car seat and dying, while his 4-year-old daughter watches from the back seat. All of us should be troubled by these images, and all of us need to acknowledge that this is about more than just 1 or 2 recent incidents. The fact is that there are communities in America where black families tell us that they are fearful of interacting with local law enforcement. How they feel is a reality that we cannot and should not ignore. And as we work through this, it will require us to ask and to answer some very difficult and uncomfortable questions. By the same token, all Americans in every community should accept and openly admit that the overwhelming majority of the men and women who serve us in law enforcement in our communities are among the very best that our country has to offer. These men and women are the thin blue line standing between us and danger. They are the ones that are going to come to your home tonight when the alarm goes off. They are the ones who are willing to charge into a nightclub in Orlando to stop a terrorist. They're also mothers and daughters, and husbands and wives, and mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sons and daughters. They deserve our gratitude. They deserve to come home safely every day from work. And quite frankly, they are tired of having to wear a black ribbon on their badge or having to attend a funeral because yet another law enforcement officer has been killed in the line of duty. There is no justification, there is no excuse for the targeted assassination of police officers. And there is no justice in ignoring the fact that for every case of real or alleged police misconduct, there are thousands of instances of bravery and of service that we'll never hear about, that there will be no videos made of. And who among us, by the way, believes that it is fair to have ourselves judged by the misconduct of a small minority who happen to share our respective profession? I don't have all the answers, but I know this. We have in this country a terrible and growing problem, a growing and festering cancer in our country that is dividing us against one another in ways that we have not seen in half a century. And it is a cancer that is fueled by anger and fear. So now we as Americans have a choice to make. We can feed this anger through posts on social media and careless words. We can stoke the fear by choosing sides and squaring off. We can choose to continue to divide ourselves along the lines of class or race or partisan politics. Or we can begin to truly confront this. Confront it by acknowledging the truth that despite decades of progress on many fronts, millions of our fellow Americans feel that they are treated differently because of the color of their skin. And after seeing videos like the one this week, they are scared. But the next time they get pulled over, one wrong move could be the last thing they do. We also need to confront it by recognizing that our law enforcement officers are human beings who every day see and interact with the worst of our society. They deal with tragedy and violence and criminality and danger, and they do it so the rest of us don't have to. And while they are brave, they're scared too. They're scared that the next call they respond to may be their last. We Americans are a complicated and imperfect and diverse people. We most certainly don't see eye to eye on everything, and not everyone is pure of heart. But I truly believe that the vast majority of us all want the same things. We want to live in relative peace, to have the opportunity to make our lives better, to leave our kids with better lives than our own, to see our country live up to its ideals. And I hope that in these things we share, our country can find a way to move forward towards understanding and compassion and healing. Americans every day, everywhere, today, should pause and pray. Pray for the family of Alton Sterling. Pray for the family of Philando Castillo. Pray for the Dallas Police Department and the Dallas Area Rapid Transit Police. Pray for the families of the fallen officers. And pray for our country and for our people. And pray that God grant us the wisdom to move forward as one nation to truly confront the challenges that lie before us. So I'll answer your questions in English and Spanish. And
Senator, President Obama made some remarks about the Dallas shooting, and some of your fellow Republicans have gone after him for contributing to the culture of divisiveness that you talked about in those remarks. Does the president hold blame for that, in your view?
The blame of the shooting lies in the hands of those individuals that conducted this ambush and this assassination. I think all of us in public life, President included, should re-examine everything we've said, everything we've done up to this point to see if in our public discourse we've contributed in any way. But ultimately, the responsibility for what happened in Dallas ultimately lies in the hands of these individuals whose motivations we don't yet fully and truly and entirely understand based on initial reports. I wouldn't want to comment on that until we know more. Suffice it to say that there is no justification. There's no excuse. There's no rationale. There's no understanding why someone would do this. There is no justification for shooting and ambushing and killing law enforcement officers.
You mentioned re-examining. Are you re-examining your own views?
I think, well, it's not about views. I think all of us need to re-examine constantly what we are doing in this country and whether it contributes to the nation moving forward or whether sometimes we're unnecessarily pitting people against each other. And I hold myself to that standard as well.
Senator, Donald Trump has said in the past that the way you prevent moments like this is you have guns on both sides, and that would make the country safer. Last night there were guns on both sides. There were armed police officers. Texas is open carry. Does having more guns in a situation like that actually make our country safer?
Well, this is a very unique situation. I mean, you have snipers and rooftops picking off police officers. It's a very difficult situation. Obviously, police officers are armed, but when you're snipers, you don't even know where they're firing from. So I would point out that with regards to the incident in Dallas last night, the police officers found themselves in a very vulnerable position. They're wearing uniforms. Someone's out there standing, trying to pick them off, and it makes them even more vulnerable to be targeted. And I think it's a very troubling development that we have elements of our society that are willing to do that.
When you speak about this anger and division, which I think we've seen a lot of this year, what can you do as an elected official to try to help something like that? How do you try to heal those conflicts?
That's an important question. You know, that's why I said I don't have all the answers. I'm not sure there's a law we can pass. I think this is about a country realizing maybe this has gone too far here. Let's take a step back and recognize there are multiple things at play here. I've discussed those in my statement. I've said this during my campaign running in the GOP primary. There are communities in this country that have a terrible relationship with their local law enforcement. We need to recognize that. We also need to recognize that law enforcement officers in this country are truly among the best that we have. What these people do on a regular basis, you never hear about. You never hear about the great things they do. You rarely, every single day, almost as a matter of routine, they are out there doing something special. No one's capturing that on video and putting it online. It's only when some bad actor or some bad incident occurs that we hear a lot about it. It doesn't excuse those incidents. But I think we need to recognize that as well. And I think we're capable of seeing both of it, right? And even people in law enforcement recognize both sides of it. But none of it justifies someone saying, and because of this, I'm going to go out and target law enforcement. I hope I don't hear anyone try to justify that.
Senator, this divisive language that you're talking about, have you heard any of it from Donald Trump?
I wouldn't just... I don't want this. The worst thing we can do now, after incidents such as this, is go out and say, all right, now what does this mean for the presidential campaign? What does this mean for the respective candidates and what they're saying? It's part of what I just said. I think this issue extends beyond the presidential campaign, beyond partisan divisions. It's an issue we've confronted for a long time, and it will be an issue we confront no matter who wins this campaign. So I'm not going to get into whether any of the presidential candidates have said anything that's... I don't think any of them are responsible for what you saw last night in Dallas.
Mr. Senator, you said you believe it extends beyond partisan politics. Do you think partisan politics fuels some of this?
I don't know if it fuels it. I think we have a sense in America today where if you look at any of the recent tragedies in this country, within minutes or hours, you start to see the different pieces begin to move, and people start to calculate, what can this mean politically? What does this mean for the election? What does this mean for the debate in Congress? What does it mean? And I just think there are some of these issues that are beyond politics. Public office and the government has a role to play in the policies that govern our society. But I think we have to sometimes stop and say, not everything has to do about which party's right, which party's wrong, and what political advantage can be gained by, highlighting one position versus another. If there are issues that are relevant to our laws, that should be confronted. But I think this extends beyond just politics.
But Senator, if we don't deal with it with our politics, how do we deal with it?
Well, I mean, our country's not a government. Our country's a people. We have a government, but our country is a lot more than a government. It's a people. We have to deal with this as people in our communities. Perhaps the most impactful thing you can do is in your very own community. Look, this community that I live, Miami, lived through a series of riots in the 80s and early 90s that involved police shootings. And it took proactive steps. And things aren't perfect. And there are still issues on both sides of the equation. But they're better than they used to be because there was an honest conversation in this community about the problems, and there were steps taken to address it. So that's an example of action that occurred at the local level that did involve government, but it also involved community leadership, and ultimately it involved communities taking responsibility for themselves and each other.
Senator, you mentioned that these suspects were picking off police officers from a distance. The police didn't know where these suspects were coming from, where these shots were coming from. Should weapons that allow that to happen be legal in the United States? Do you see that as being part of
We don't even know the weapons that were used. I haven't heard the conversation about what weapons were used. Suffice it to say, I mean, if people want to get into that debate, I'm not in favor of criminals having guns. Unfortunately, criminals don't care what the law is. If you pass a law that bans a certain gun, criminals are going to have it, law-abiding people will not. Criminals, by definition, ignore the law. And there is few of any substances or material in this country or any part of the world where you've been able to ban people from having them just because you passed a law. Criminals are going to get access to guns. Many of the guns used to commit violent acts in America today are stolen and purchased off the black market. Europe has very stringent gun laws. We saw what happened in Paris, saw what happened in Turkey. So I just don't think those laws are effective. I think they keep guns out of the hands of law-abiding people. They don't keep them out of the hands of criminals.
We understand that there are going to be people who are watching this at home right now who are saying, we've seen these kinds of shootings before on both sides. I mean, we've seen Black Americans who are killed, we've seen police shootings, and we hear about sorrow and prayers for politicians, and then we move on to the next one. And you yourself, after Orlando, said it was Orlando's turn. So what do you say to people who are sitting at home watching the sorrow and watching the prayers and saying it's just going to be another couple of weeks until this happens again?
Well, it's true when it comes to the news cycle. I mean, we'll move on to other issues that are more topical, and that's what people will cover. Orlando's still real to me. It was a terrorist attack. That's one kind of danger our country faces. This issue extends in a different direction. And again, we don't know all the facts, so let's learn all the facts before we know the genesis of all this. But this involves, by all indications, the targeting of law enforcement officers for a very specific, through very specific measures. And what I would say is, as a country, we need to continue to we need to have an honest conversation to try to make progress forward on two different things here that are interrelated in some way but are different. One is the feelings of our law enforcement officers and the fact that they have seen over the last couple of years an increase in the targeting of law enforcement and the increased dangers that they face. We should never forget that. On the other hand is the things I've already outlined, and that is the fact that in many communities in this country, law enforcement and the local community do not have the best relationship, and that needs to be confronted. So if we want to make progress, we have to deal with both of these issues. But I want to be clear. No matter what might be happening in any community, it does not justify someone saying, now I'm going to go out and kill police officers.
So you talk about a divide between law enforcement and local communities in some areas. The front page of one of the New York papers today said civil war. Are we in a civil war?
Well, I think this is a horrible tragedy, what we saw last night in Dallas, but it's not a civil war. But it's a horrible tragedy and a serious problem nonetheless. Sí, claro. ¿Tiene una pregunta? En español. Yo no lo escribí en español, pero lo voy a hacer en breve. And I'm trying to summarize what I said in English and Spanish. Durante los últimos 3 días, esta nación ha visto una serie de actos violentos y trágicos. Primero vimos los videos de la muerte de Alton Sterling en Philando Castile. Anoche vimos el asesinato coordinado por cobardes en contra de oficiales de la policía de Dallas. Yo no tengo todas las respuestas sobre estos incidentes, pero hay ciertas cosas que podemos decir, aunque debemos reservar hasta que se sepa todos los hechos. Sabemos que alguien que no ha vivido la experiencia de la comunidad afroamericana no puede entender lo que es ser un afroamericano, pero sí podemos entender por qué tanto de nuestros ciudadanos en este país, americanos en la comunidad afroamericana, se sienten molestos y furiosos con las imágenes de un señor que nunca había violado la ley, muriéndose con su hija de 4 años sentada en el mismo carro por el simple hecho de haber tenido una de las luces del automóvil no funcionando. Todos nosotros debemos estar molestos con estas imágenes y tenemos que reconocer que esto tiene que ver con mucho más que simplemente 1 o 2 incidentes recientes. Hay una realidad que hay muchas comunidades en este país donde familias afroamericanas tienen miedo la interacción con los oficiales locales de la policía. Lo que ellos sienten es una realidad y esto no se puede ignorar. Y trabajando sobre este tema va a requerir que nosotros preguntemos y contestemos unas preguntas muy difíciles, pero de la misma manera todos nosotros debemos reconocer y admitir abiertamente que la enorme mayoría de los hombres y mujeres que nos sirven en la policía en este país son entre los mejores que tenemos en este país. Ellos son la última línea entre nosotros y peligro. Ellos son los que van a venir esta noche si la alarma suena en la casa. Ellos son los que entraron en ese club en Orlando para confrontar a un terrorista. Ellos son madres y padres, esposos y esposas, hijas y hijos. Y ellos merecen nuestra gratitud. Y merecen también poder regresar a su hogar cada día. Y ellos están cansados de tener que poner una cinta negra sobre su pecho o ir a otro funeral por causa de la muerte de otro policía en este país. No existe justificación, no hay excusa por el asesinato de policía. No hay justicia en ignorar la realidad que por cada caso de abuso policíaco hay miles de casos en cual los policías han hecho algo increíble para nuestra comunidad y no hay video de eso. Y eso nunca se discute en la prensa. ¿Y quién entre nosotros está dispuesto a ser juzgado por las acciones de una minoría pequeña porque están en la misma profesión que tenemos nosotros? Yo no tengo todas las respuestas, pero yo sé que tenemos un problema muy grave en este país, un problema que sigue creciendo y que nos está dividiendo de manera que no hemos visto en casi medio siglo. Es un cáncer que crece por el miedo, un cáncer que tenemos que escoger aquí qué vamos a hacer. Podemos seguir diciendo cosas irresponsables en la red social, palabras irresponsables de líderes. Podemos seguir dividiéndonos entre nosotros a través de partidos, clases, raza, política, o podemos confrontar la realidad. Confrontar la realidad que después de décadas de progreso, todavía hay millones de nuestros ciudadanos afroamericanos que se sienten que son tratados distintos por el color de su piel. Y la realidad también que nuestros policías son seres humanos, que cada día ven lo peor de nuestra sociedad, que cada día tienen que intercambiar con la tragedia, la violencia, los criminales, el peligro, para que nosotros para que el resto de nosotros no tenemos que hacer lo mismo. Y aunque son personas con mucho coraje, ellos también tienen miedo. La policía también tiene miedo que la próxima llamada que tengan que responder será la última. Nosotros somos un pueblo complicado, imperfecto, un pueblo diverso. No estamos de acuerdo sobre todo, y no todo el mundo que está en este debate viene con un corazón puro. Pero yo sí creo que la enorme mayoría de los americanos quieren lo mismo: vivir en paz, tener la oportunidad de mejorar su vida y dejar a nuestros hijos con vidas mejor que la nuestra, y ver a nuestro país vivir a sus ideales, realizar sus ideales. Y yo realmente quiero y espero y rezo de que lo que nosotros compartimos como pueblo y como país nos ayude a movernos hacia el entendimiento, la compasión. Nuestro pueblo, no importa dónde sea, hoy debe parar y rezar por las familias de Alton Sterling, por la familia de Philando Castile, por la policía de Dallas, por el Dallas Area Rapid Transit Police. Y también rezar por la familia de esos policías que murieron. Rezar por nuestro país y por nuestro pueblo. Y rezar que Dios nos dé a nosotros la sabiduría para seguir adelante como una nación, para confrontar los retos que nos queda por delante.
Hay algunos que dicen que el presidente Obama habla en una forma que provoca este tipo de cosas. ¿Qué piensas sobre esos comentarios?
Yo creo que los responsables de estos actos son los individuos que los cometieron. Yo creo que todos nosotros en la vida pública debemos constantemente examinar si hemos hecho algo que le está dando impulso a estas divisiones que existen en nuestra sociedad. Yo incluyo al presidente y me incluyo a mí también. Pero al final del día los responsables por un acto como lo que vimos anoche en Dallas son los 5 individuos o más, no se sabe todavía, que cometieron este horrible acto.
Senador, cuando un policía lo para a usted o para a un ciudadano en la calle, ¿cuál es la medida que debe tomar ese ciudadano cuando el policía te para?
Bueno, eso es una pregunta importante, ¿no? Hay muchas personas que se están preguntando esto. La enorme mayoría de las personas no van a tener problemas, porque la policía es muy profesional y pero van a haber ocasiones en que la situación no es así. Y yo creo que eso es una pregunta muy legítima. Y yo creo que eso es algo que se le debe preguntar a las agencias policíacas, no porque yo creo que estén haciendo algo incorrecto, por ejemplo, en esta comunidad, pero porque creo que es importante también entender que el policía también tiene que sentirse seguro en cualquier circunstancia. Al final del día, yo creo que esas medidas es algo que debe ser parte de esa conversación. Obviamente, seguir las instrucciones que dé el policía. En el caso de que ocurrió en Minnesota, no sale en el video, pero la novia del señor que murió dice que él le había dicho al policía que él tenía una arma, que tenía licencia de arma, que es lo que te dice, que es lo que las instrucciones son cuando uno tiene licencia de arma. Y él siguió esos procedimientos y desafortunadamente, trágicamente, resultó en lo que resultó. He asked a question about what should someone do if you're stopped by the police. Sí, por favor, déjame contestar en inglés porque esa pregunta no fue en inglés. He asked a question about what do you do if you're stopped by a police officer, and I would say, look, that's an important question to ask of local law enforcement, not because they're doing anything wrong, but it's something that we should honestly talk about a little bit further, because obviously follow the instructions you're given. That's very important. But I think that one of the things that troubles some people in the case of what happened in Minnesota, it's not on video, but according to the gentleman's girlfriend, he had a concealed weapons permit, and you are instructed, as I do, and I have a concealed weapons permit, that if you have a permit and you're carrying, that you tell the officer that you are carrying a firearm and are licensed to do so. And according to his girlfriend, that's what he did. So that's one of the things that adds a troubling element to all this. But I think that has to be part of our conversation in this country as well, moving forward. And to get law enforcement's perspective on it. That's important.
Senator, I'm sorry, just to ask you one a little bit off topic. I just wanted to hear in your words your final decision about attending the convention tonight.
I didn't know that was in doubt.
Definitely not.
Yeah, I mean, we've announced that a couple of days ago. So. All right, thank you guys for coming. Perdón, sí.
La revista Forbes ha informado que Miami es la peor ciudad para vivir en los Estados Unidos. Y a esto se le ha agregado la intolerancia que se está viviendo y la inseguridad. ¿Qué está haciendo el gobierno local, estatal y federal para poder ayudar a que las familias salgan de esa crisis?
Yo no estoy de acuerdo con la revista Forbes que Miami es la peor ciudad donde vivir. Si fuera así, la propiedad no estuviera tan alta y no seguirían construyendo más todavía. Como toda gran ciudad tiene problemas y retos que tiene que enfrentar, la pregunta que hace es una que realmente le corresponde primordialmente a los gobiernos locales, ¿no? El gobierno federal se enfoca más en temas federales, la protección de la seguridad nacional, etcétera, pero yo soy residente de Miami y lo he sido del año 85, nací aquí, así que yo no estoy de acuerdo con la revista Forbes. Thank you.